Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, the Mishnah 8 lines down. Zok the Mishnah, Noistim Kli Tachas Haner Lekabel Nitzotzes. You can take a container and put it under the nair to collect the sparks. But you can't put water into it. You can't have the Kli filled with water because it will extinguish the sparks. But otherwise, you could take a Kli and put it under the nair to be makabel the sparks, and it's not a problem. Frank the Gemara, how could you do that? Well, the sparks are muksa. Now, the sparks will land in the Kli, and you're going to be mevatel the Kli me'achana. Now you won't be able to carry the Kli. And how are you allowed to do that? How you can't make something, a Kli, which is usable, and now make it muksa on Shabbos? You're mevatel Kli me'achana. But no, he says no. The sparks, after it lands in the Kli, it's not significant. It's not something that we consider having any substance, and therefore the Kli will not become muksa on account of those sparks. They're insignificant. They're ein ben mamish, and therefore they will not make the Kli muksa. That's why you were allowed to place the Kli there to be makabel and tzaisis, so long as you don't put water. Let's say the Tana is like Rav Yosi, who says Gairim Lakiboy is also, even causing indirectly extinguishing a fire, even indirectly is also. The case over there involves, we'll see later in the Masechet, is a case where there's a fire and a person puts kalim, which are filled with water, and he puts it in a line before the fire, so when the fire spreads, it will reach these kalim, it will burst, and then the fire will be extinguished through the water. The Chacham say it's mutter, because it's only a gram kibui. Now, even though normally that would be also, but because of the Hofstedter moment, it's mutter. But Rav Yosi says no, even that, even causing indirectly the fire to be extinguished, is also. So over here we say you can't put water into it because it'll extinguish the sparks. Now this is an indirect causing of the fire the sparks to be extinguished. It's only a gram kibu. Let's say the Tana is going like Rav Yosi, who says even a gram kibu is also. So Lemetanan stomach Rav Yosi Damar Garam Lakiboy also affecting more Tisbra. Is that so? Ema the Amar of Yosi b'Shabbos, Erev Shabbos mi Omar. Here we're talking in the Mishnah, putting this even on Erev Shabbos. Now Rav Yosi only answered it on Shabbos itself. He didn't answer putting these kalim there in before Shabbos. So what's the comparison? Maybe you'll say no, our Mishnah is only answering this on Shabbos, but not on Erev Shabbos. No. It's mutter to put the container there, the Kli, to makabel the sparks. On Shabbos, certainly Erev Shabbos, but even on Shabbos it's mutter. But but putting water is also not only on Shabbos, it's also even on Erev Shabbos. Now Rav Yosi only answered the case in putting the Kli filled with water, but Kli Cheres that's filled with water and putting it in the line of the fire only on Shabbos, it'll burst. But to put it Erev Shabbos, there's no answer. So what's the comparison? The Gemara says, El Amar Ravashi, Afilu Tamer Rabbanan. You can even say our Mishnah is going according to the Rabbanan. So what's the issue over here? Shiny Hacham Bipnei Shemekarav as Kibuyav. The Isra over here is, and it's also even on Erev Shabbos, because you're Mekava the Kibuyav. Because we're afraid that if you have it with water, he might, at the time that he's pouring the water into the vessel, or he might have water in the vessel and lift it up, he might lift it up towards the spark, and that would be considered kibui mamish. Over here, we're concerned that if he's allowed to put the water into the vessel, then he might do it on Shabbos, and as he's pouring the water, it might extinguish the spark, or he might lift up the kli, bring it closer to the spark, and extinguish the fire. So since there's a possibility over here that he might come lidei a malacha d'oraisa, they answered it, and they answered even on Erev Shabbos, and perhaps even the Rabbanan would agree to this over here, because over here there is a possibility he'll come, that he could come lidei malacha d'oraisa. In the case where there's a kli, it's a closed container. Now, if it bursts, there's no malacha d'oraisa over there. That's only a groma. It's no malacha d'oraisa. So therefore, the Rabbanan hold, well, they're not geyser. They're not geyser in that case. Mishum hefsed mom. Rav Yossi is geyser, but over here, where there's a possibility that he might come lidei malacha d'oraisa, perhaps even the Rabbanan would agree to this case. Now, Tosfos points out that in most cases, it would not be really a malacha d'oraisa according to Rav Shimon, because in any event, it would be a malach she'en tzrich legufa. Because according to Rav Shimon, the kiboy is only a malacha, the Isser d'oraisa is only if he's extinguishing for the purpose of creating a coal, creating a wick, of creating something positive with it. But just extinguishing it on its own is only removing a negative. And if there's no intent, there's no motive over here to create something, a coal or a wick or something like that, then there would not be a malacha d'oraisa according to Rav Shimon. It would be considered a malacha she'en tzrich legufa. Nevertheless, since there theoretically could be a malacha d'oraisa, even according to Rav Shimon, theoretically, they were geyser in all cases. But in the case where Rav Yossi and the Rabbanan argue, by the case of the kli, there's no possibility of a malacha d'oraisa, so over there the Rabbanan are matir. But perhaps over here, in this case, by putting water into the vessel, even perhaps the Rabbanan would agree that it's also. Hanrulach kira, hanrulach kira, hanrulach kira. B'met taimnim, b'met ain't taimnim. So the fourth parak is b'met taimnim, insulating. If a person has hot food, he prepares the hot food before Shabbos. Now he wants to keep it warm on the Shabbos for Shabbos. He wants to insulate it, cover it with something so that it will retain its heat and it'll be warm for the Shabbos Suda. He can only insulate it and cover it with items that do not increase the heat. It only preserves the heat, it maintains that level, but does not increase the heat. Now, there are certain things that are identified as being moisiv hevel, as increasing the temperature. Those are aser, because we're afraid that he'll come to use other things that increase the heat. He'll come to insulate with items which have coals in it, and he might come to stoke the fire and stoke the coals, and that would be an Isser d'oraisa of being mavir. So that would be creating the fire. Therefore, all items which increase the intensity of the heat, the Rabbanan were geyser, but something which only preserves the heat, that's mutter. So, b'met time, what are the items which are mutter? What are the items which are also? Ein time loy begefes, you cannot insulate with gefes. So that's the pulp from like olives or sesame seeds. The pulp over there, you cannot use that. V'loy bezevel, and not fertilizer. V'loy bemelch, not salt. V'loy sid, not lime. V'loy bechol, and not sand. Those are considered moisiv hevel, and they're also bein lachin, bein yeveshim, whether they're moist, they're wet, or they're dry. It doesn't matter. V'loy beteven, and v'loy bezagin, and not with straw, and not with grape skins. V'loy bemuchin, and not with felt. V'loy ba'asovim, or grass, bizman shem lachem. Now there the yisr is only when they're wet. Aval taimnim behem geshem yeveshim. But when they're dry, then it's mutter. Imoyelu, in fact, the Gemara, the Shaila Gefes shel Zeisim Tanan, when it says the pulp, is it referring specifically to olives, or aval the shumshin shaper dami? But if it would be sesame seeds, it would be mutter. Or dilma the shumshinim Tanan v'kol shkein to Zeisim, or is a mission referring to shumshimina? And for sure, certainly, it would refer to Zeisim as well. Tashma adam Rav Zer mishum chad be Rav Yaina kupa shet talman ba asalaniach ala Gefes shel Zeisim. If you have a box that is insulated with something that's not moisiv hevel, but nevertheless it's also to put it on gefes shel zeisim, on pulp of zeisim. So you see, it says specifically zeisim. So therefore, we want to say that therefore the Mishnah is referring specifically to zeisim and not shumshimin. Shema mina shel zeisim tana. Therefore, there you can learn from here that the Mishnah is referring to Zaysim. The Gemara says no. Maybe I'll tell you as far as insulating the item itself, even Shum Shemim also be also. But here we're talking about not insulating. We're talking about an item that was insulated, and you're putting this box on top of something. So over here, the Isser is only something which is Meisav Hevel, even to a greater degree, that the heat rises up and from the item under the box, and it rises up and will heat up the items that are on top of it. Here, as far as in asuke hevla, the zeisim maskim hevla, the shumshimim loy maske hevla. Over here, in terms of that intensity to cause it, the heat to rise up to what's above it, perhaps that's only zeisim, not shumshim. But in terms of our Mishnah, which talks about insulating the item, perhaps it's over there. It's not only zeisim, it's shumshimim as well.